Hey, it's the good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit reminding you that nobody Patreons like we Patreon. So join us at C4FAP and go over to Patreon/Comics Fun Profit and sign up at a level of your choosing. There's various tiers with various goodies for you. Something that everyone gets at any level is you get to be a part of our Slack channel community. And you get early and ad-free access to all our episodes. But wait, there's more. So go over to Patreon/Comics Fun Profit and check out all we have to offer. We urge you, sign up today.
Aloha, this is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing Eisner Award winner and the amazing Stuart Moore. Stuart, welcome to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just sitting here in my home in Brooklyn, and things are okay. Thank you.
No, but thank you very much. Now, listeners, Stuart is here to promote the Wrong Earth Purple One Shot. Now, this is a part of the Ahoy Comics magazine Multiverse of Madness event. Now, the comic, and well, when this episode airs, the issue would be out in stores already. But you know what? This Multiverse of Madness event has already made $2 billion when it came out on May 18th. And that was only on Earth-Kappa.
I like that.
All right. Now, before we dive into the interview, I want to tell Stuart, Stuart, for the last month, the majority of my interviews literally have led up to this moment. It all started with my interview with Tom Pyre when I started to talk to him about the Wrong Earth event. And then I spoke to Elisa Whitney. I know she worked at on Vertigo, with Vertigo Comics. I believe I think you might have worked with her back during that time in Vertigo.
Yeah. Tom and Elisa and I all worked together on staff for a while.
Yes, and then one of my other interviews that I did was with Carrie Harris. Now, Carrie Harris, yes. She wrote the second book in the Marvel Crisis Protocol novel series. Now, her book is called Shadow Warriors.
Shadow Avengers, actually.
Yes, Shadow Avengers. I'm sorry, Shadow Avengers. Sorry, I'm thinking Shadow Warriors, the Japanese samurai show from. All right, listeners, you guys are in for a treat. We're just gonna have fun with this interview. We are. But I'm also gonna say, Stuart, I'm gonna say Carrie gave high praises for your book. She read your book, and and of course, I have to mention to the listeners that your book, Stuart, that you wrote, it was the first book in the Marvel Crisis Protocol, and it was titled Target Kree. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, that's correct. Marvel Crisis Protocol is it's a tabletop gaming system, actually, with miniatures. And I was commissioned to write the first novel, which is called Target Kree, and Carrie's written the second one, Shadow Avengers, which picks up on a team that I introduced right at the very end of mine. So we're sort of tag teaming the books a little bit. They have a relationship to each other.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, just for our listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, but pretty much mostly the books are kind of standalone stories. But like you said, there's that little bit of that ending part where it kind of goes into her book, correct?
Yeah. The Crisis Protocol books are sequels to each other. It hasn't been announced yet, but I might be working on a third one right now. So yes, but yeah, I'm glad Carrie said nice things about my book because she had to read it. She was forced to read it because she had to pick up from where I left off. But she had no choice in the matter. But yeah, and her book is, as you say, is just out, and it's wonderful. It's about a whole new team led by Dr. Strange. It's really fun stuff.
And then also, too, I want to say, because during the interview, Carrie really strongly encouraged me to buy the first book, your book, and also, well, of course, I'm going to buy her book too, because she said it was a very good story. She said your story was very good. So. So Carrie, thank you very much for that recommendation.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And then also and one of my last interviews that I've done was with Nancy A. Collins.
Yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was that she was the first female writer to write the Swamp Thing in the early 90s.
Yeah, I believe that's right. I was the editor, and I was the one who hired her for that.
Yes, she was telling me that incredible story. It was great. No, it's that but it's just like I said, it's just so cool. Like within the last month, I'm talking to all these people, and it's like
Nancy was, by the way, Nancy was also the first writer from Louisiana to write Swamp Thing. She was the first one who actually lived in the area, knew the whole setting and everything. So that was important too.
Yes, because she was telling me. Sorry, I'm kind of going off the cuff.
No, I'm just going all over the place too.
But it was great because she was telling me about, that, she said, growing up in the swamps, you have to be careful where you step. Snapping turtles, I think those deadly poison snakes, the mossicans or something like that. You just got to be careful where you go, So yeah, but that was so cool. And I'm going to say, after talking to her, I want, because the Swamp Thing by Nancy A. Collins omnibus is out, and I think it's like through Amazon. I know In Stock Trade still has it. I mean, I want to pick up that omnibus just to read it.
Yeah, that was quite. Yeah, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of issues. That's some fun stuff.
All right, now listeners, I'm going to go through Stuart's amazing history of working in comics and in the published industry. I'm just going to go over the highlights. And Stuart, please correct me if I'm wrong. Please add anything, any little tidbits, or if you want to expand on certain things, please do. Now, listeners, like I said, that Stuart is an Eisner Award winner. He won the Will Eisner Award for Best Editor back in 1996. He won the Don Thompson Award for Favorite Editor back in 1999. For comics, Stuart, like I said, I'm just picking on. I just have to go through just picking on some stuff. And like I said, please feel free to add anything. Now, from Ahoy Comics, you wrote the Captain Ginger series.
Yes.
And was that back in 2018 or 2019?
Well, there have been two volumes. So the first one was with the launch of Ahoy in 2018. The second one was basically in 2020. Yeah, it kind of, the second one ran into some trouble because of the pandemic, basically. And we finished it digitally, but there are trade paperbacks in print of both of them. And we are working on some more. It's happening very slowly, but there'll be at least a one shot coming up sometime soon.
Okay. Then also for the volume 1 trade, you had legendary writer artist Walt Simonson, who gave I believe the introduction in the he had an introduction in the trade. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Walter gave us a very, very nice endorsement blurb for the first issue, and it. If you ever met Walter, he's very loquacious. He loves to talk, and he also loves to write. And he wrote such a long blurb endorsing the book that we asked him if we could use it as the introduction. And he very graciously said yes. So yeah, that was really nice of him. He was very kind there.
I just want to read the one quote that I saw on the cover was. Walt said, "This book is steeped in cat lore, cat behaviors, and cat knowledge."
That's fair. Yeah, yeah. I have a couple of cats, and I grew up with cats. I've always had them. But June Brigman, my collaborator,
yes.
Has a frightening number of cats. I think she's got 6 or 8 right now. So she really, I know cat behaviors, but she really, really knows cat behaviors. And she's been just great. She gives each one of the characters, even though they're humanoid cats, she gives them incredible personalities that you can just instantly relate to.
That is so cool. And then I just want to say also too, that the series is the whole series colored by Veronica Gandini, is that correct?
Gandini, yeah.
Okay. All right, and then also to for Ahoy Comics magazine, and listeners, I keep referring to Ahoy Comics magazine because I love when I talked to Tom Pyre, he always wanted to make, you know, Ahoy Comics more of a magazine, and each issue adds little things to it. Like I know David Hyde of Superfan Promotions contributed a page of making some type of alcohol, not an alcohol, a cocktail.
Yes, he's actually done that for each of the Wrong Earth one-shots. He's got a wonderful 1980s themed page in mind.
Oh, okay, that's so cool. So I know, so Stuart has also written some short stories for Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, Snifter of Death. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've written a couple of things. Ahoy has published 4 volumes of Edgar Allan Poe's. It was originally Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Terror. Then it became, oh God, I'm forgetting the middle one. And eventually became Snifter of Death. Snifter of Blood is the other one. And yeah, I've written a few short pieces throughout. My most recent one was in the first issue of Snifter of Death. And that was a short story of Edgar Allan Poe as a little boy. And he has a little pet raven who follows him around. It's very silly, but Poe's Snifter of Death is like that anyway. It's basically humorous horror stories hosted by Edgar Allan Poe as our own particularly drunken version of the Crypt Keeper, kind of introducing things. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun sandbox to play in.
Yeah, and then also too. Now, Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was doing some research, you're pretty much well known for writing the Firestorm Volume 3 from 2005 to 2007, from issues 14 to 32. And I guess the storyline is called Reborn, and the focus is on James Roush is the Firestorm in that series.
Jason,
I'm sorry. Jason, that's right.
Yeah, I picked up that book, about a year into the run, and at that time, it was starring Jason Rush, and the artist was Jamal Igle, who I'm still friends with, and who does the Wrong Earth, the core Wrong Earth series for Ahoy, Jamal and I really clicked on it. We really enjoyed working on it. We were it was the usual DC situation where there were all sorts of crossovers to be accommodated and things like that. That was a wonderful experience. And it was the editor at the time was Steve Wacker, who's now doing working with Jonathan Hickman at Substack. And Steve really took a chance on me. That was the first sort of long-running comic I worked on. I'd been in around the industry for a while. I'd edited a lot of books, and I'd done some graphic novels and short pieces. But he really gave me a shot on that, and I was always grateful for that. And that was it. Yeah, it was a really fun series. It went through a lot of changes. Even just who Firestorm was and how his powers worked changed a lot during the course of it. But I think it came together pretty well. I'm quite proud of those books. And Reborn, you mentioned Reborn. That's the title of one storyline, and it's the only one they actually collected in trade paperback. It was they did an event at DC called 1 Year Later. Where everything skipped a year. And that was our 1 year later storyline. And it was when Firestorm, Jason wound up having to share the Firestorm persona with the character Firehawk, which was a very strange thing to do because you had a superhero, Firehawk, joining with a regular kid to become another superhero. And I always had, it was suggested by DC, and I liked it. I liked the characters. I liked the way they interacted. But making the rationale work out was funny because I always thought, why does she need to do that? She already has powers. Why does she need to become another superhero? But so it wound up being a situation they were forced to do for a while, and then we got it around to something else. But it was fun. It was great. And working with Jamal is always a joy. That was just wonderful.
Oh, okay. And then, sorry, off the cuff question, and I'm kind of jumping ahead just a little bit because now, correct me if I'm wrong, doing my research, when you're reading comics, you love the original Firestorm. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. I had been just about the right age when that came out, and the this was this is kind of obscure comics history, but the original run of Firestorm was canceled after I think 5 issues or something because DC had a line-wide, the DC implosion that just sort of like they axed a whole lot of books at once. So it really ended in the middle of a storyline, and that was frustrating. Like I remember that I was like, what happens next? It was I was really enjoying it, but they brought it back a few years later, and then it ran for a very long time after that.
Because I'm going to say, because I remember seeing ads, correct me if I'm wrong, because that Firestorm character came out, what, in the 70s, the late 70s?
77, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Because I remember seeing those ads in the DC Comics of going, oh my God, what is it? It just was like, how the ad was like captured and like, yeah,
it was really explosive looking stuff. And it was also at a time when DC wasn't launching a lot of new books, like so it kind of stood out. Like, what is this? And I think Jerry Conway and Al Milgrom have said that they kind of, the original Firestorm costume, they made it really exaggerated and overblown because they wanted it to be a high school kid's idea of what a superhero costume was. Yeah. So it was it was very splashy. It really stood out on the page.
It really is. Sorry, I'm kind of going off the cuff, because don't ask me why, but I love the Firestorm character, and I'll be honest with listeners. I know who Firestorm is. I know, but I'll be honest. I've never read the series, but it's just I love the costume. It's just because when Kenner launched the I want to say the Superpower series, the action figure line.
Yeah.
I remember buying the Firestorm action figure. Again, never read the comic, but I love the costume, the character, and a couple years ago when I think DC was doing their own action figure line before it changed over to Todd McFarlane Toys, I bought the Firestorm action figure. The original costume design, I just loved it. So yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so continuing. So comics, you wrote some X-Men titles, you wrote New Avengers, Spider-Man, Star Trek. You have a long list. And then, as you mentioned, graphic novels. I'm just going to mention a couple. One of the graphic novels that you wrote was an adaptation of Brian Jacques Redwall.
I think, yeah.
That came out in 2007, and that was and the art was done by Brett Blevins. Is that correct?
Yes, and Brett was a big Redwall fan, and he did a beautiful job on it. That worked out really well.
Yeah, and then also too, and just recently in 2019, you did the Batman Nightwalker graphic novel, and the art was done by Chris Wildgoose. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's a confusing one to explain to people because that is actually that was one of the first books commissioned in DC's Ink line, which is their young adult series, and it's actually an adaptation of a prose novel by Marie Lu.
Yes.
And I adapted it to comics form. Chris did a gorgeous job on it. It's beautiful. It took a long time, actually. It was one of the first ones commissioned, but it was not one of the first ones to come out because it just took a long time to put the whole thing together. But yeah, that was just a wonderful experience. That worked out really well.
Because I'm going to say because I've heard that the DC Inkline graphic novels, they're very popular. It's really good. I've heard like some, just like some of the books that come from there. Some of my friends say, yeah, these stories are great.
Yeah, there's some really quality stuff there. They got a really interesting mix of creative people working on it. I think they're still coming out. They had a lot of stuff in the works. But like the Raven book got a lot of attention. There were quite a few of them. Yeah, and they're really good. Like they're really fun stuff. They're out of continuity for the most part. Like they're generally their own thing. But things like Green Lantern Legacy, that was a really good title. There are a lot of them.
Yeah. Okay. And then now I know you've done some prose works. You wrote a short story. Excuse me. you wrote a short story in Star Trek Constellations that is an anthology book celebrating Star Trek's 40th anniversary. Your short story was called Chaotic Response. And I know this is an audio, but I have a copy.
There you go. Wow. I think I have a copy too. I should have a copy. Yeah, that was the assignment there was just to do a story from the original series, because that's what they were doing the anniversary of. And I decided to do a story about Spock that actually used logic theory, which I hadn't really seen before. And I was a little bit hampered by not knowing very much about logic theory, but that's what research is for. And I think it came out reasonably well.
Yes.
I can't remember a thing about it now. It's been so long. But other than that,
trying to prepare for this interview. I'm sorry. I started to read the first few pages of it. I love it because it's Spock and another Vulcan, and it's just to me in the first few pages, it's Spock trying to focus on being logical with all these distractions being thrown at him.
Yeah.
The changing color of the lights. But it makes sense because I always.
It's coming back to me now. I think I was basing some of that on some of the training sessions we've seen of young Spock in the various movies, and more recently, even in Discovery, we saw some of that too.
Yeah. Off the cuff question: Are you a big Star Trek fan?
I am a big Star Trek fan. Yes. I just actually watched the first episode of Strange New Worlds, which I loved. Thought that was really fun.
Me and my wife, we just watched it. I love it. It was oh my God! It was like
there's a really nice. I mean, it tackles some issues really nicely, but there's also just a really nice feeling about it. I just kind of wanted to live in the sick bay with those people. I just really like those characters.
Yes. Sorry, I could go on, but let me continue on with this because we need to promote the wrong Earth Purple.
Yes.
Sorry,
that's why we're here. Yes.
Sorry. So I'm just going to. So I know you've done some other prose work. You've done X-Men, the Dark Phoenix Saga.
Yes.
Civil War, and it's Civil War, a novel of the Marvel Universe. And of course,
that's based on the comics, not on the movie. So it was and that was quite a challenge. That was what was going on there too. Was I was on a freelance basis. I was editing Marvel's own series of prose novels, and that was the first one. And the only person who could write it in time was me. So actually, my editor on that was Marie Jabins, who's now editor in chief of DC. We brought her in to work on that. But that was a real challenge because there are just so many characters and so many tie-in stories and everything to Civil War. And at the time, I felt like I had to really pick and choose. Like I left Hawkeye out because I just didn't want to overwhelm new readers, who wouldn't know all these characters. And I've thought about this recently. If I were doing this today, and I kind of am with the Crisis Protocol books, I don't worry about it as much because I just figure all these characters are much more familiar to people from all the movies.
Yes.
So, and that's a big change in just 10 years.
Yes. Yeah. And it's incredible. And as you mentioned, it's 10 years because this year we celebrate the Marvel's The Avengers movie that came out 10 years ago.
That's incredible. I can't believe that.
So like you said, now people know who Hawkeye is. The amazing thing is people know who Groot is.
Yeah.
I mean, because Stuart, let's be honest, 15 years ago, if you and me talk about Groot, we kind of know who we're talking about. We're also thinking about that early the early or the 50s comic book.
The Kirby thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry. So, okay. I know you also wrote a couple of, number of nonfiction books. One of them was Marvel's Iron Man 3, The Art of the Movie. You've been an editor at St. Martin's Press for Marvel Knights. And correct me if I'm wrong on this. You were one of the founding editors of Vertigo?
Yeah,
that
I was
correct?
one of the initial editors there. I joined DC about 2 years before the Vertigo imprint was launched
Mm-hmm.
as part of Karen Berger's editorial group, which the company was expanding,
Mm-hmm.
not yet knowing they were going to spin it off into a separate imprint. But yeah, I edited Swamp Thing and Hellblazer and oh god, Transmetropolitan,
Yes.
Books of Magic, a whole lot of things.
Yes.
I was there for quite a while.
Yes. Off the cuff question, how was, and this kind of sounds like a dumb question I'm going to ask you, but what did it feel like being there literally at the start of Vertigo? The Vertigo imprint.
No, that's not a dumb question. I don't know if I have a smart answer to it, but we knew it was something important.
Mm-hmm.
And Vertigo had a head start on a lot of imprint launches, in that the editorial group was already publishing 4 or 5 of the comics or 6 actually, I think, of the comics that became part of the core of the imprint.
Yes.
So Swamp Thing, Hellblazer, Shade, Sandman, of course, and that was the star, and a couple of others, Animal Man, Doom Patrol. So we knew we had something running already that people would recognize and that people liked.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a matter of building on it, and we really had a feeling the time was right. DC was very supportive. DC was very much behind the whole thing. So yeah, it was nerve-wracking. We didn't have quite as much staff as we had in later years, so it was there was a lot of work to be done, and there was a lot of change happening all around the industry. But we knew it was something big. It was exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but like I said, that because it's incredible. Like I said, what you guys have done, it's incredible. Yeah, and it's amazing. Okay, Stuart, I'm going to ask you, did I miss anything?
Did you miss anything? Well, yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of other things, but that's fine. That's enough. That's plenty for now.
All right, and then I'm going to ask, do you want to add anything to your list? Did I miss something or any key things?
Geez, I'm trying to look at what I've done. I'm looking at the shelves. I'm trying to see if there was anything.
Fine, yeah.
No, I think it was on your list. I don't know if you mentioned the Zodiac Legacy novels that
I missed that one. Please talk about that. Yeah.
I co-wrote those with Stan Lee. He created them. And those were young adult novels or middle grade novels actually, about a team of an international team of superheroes, teenage superheroes, mostly teenage. We actually had a little problem with it because they were all born in different years of the Chinese zodiac, which meant that unlike most teams, they all had to be different ages because they were born in different years. So that was a challenge actually. But that was a lot of fun. Stan created the whole thing. We co-wrote the stuff, and then Andy Tong did gorgeous full-page illustrations.
Yes.
I just spoke to him for the first time the other day. I'd never actually met him, but there was a project we were maybe going to do together that unfortunately he had to back out of. But yeah, that whole thing, and those books the first couple volumes especially were extremely popular. I think Disney lost interest in it a little bit as it went along. I haven't done many conventions the last couple of years, but the last few times I did conventions, I would get kids coming up to me who'd read those books or who had read the first one and they'd gotten it out of their school library or something, and say like, I want to know what happens next. Do you have? And I would, I remember one little girl. She seemed really smart, and her mother was like, you can buy one book. Mm-hmm. So I sold her the second volume, and then she came by the table again, and I just gave her the third one. just take it. So that was fun. That was really rewarding, and it was like I haven't worked to that audience very much, and I'd like to do more.
That's so awesome. And then before I continue on, because there was one other book series, your prose novels that you worked. It was a series, the Dark Future books. Is that correct?
Yeah, those were the first novels I wrote. That's a spin-off property from Warhammer. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the people behind Warhammer are actually the same people who are now behind Aconite Books, which is publishing the Crisis Protocol stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, they again, as I said about Steve Wacker on Firestorm, they took a chance on me. I wrote a couple books for them. It was a fun series. It was satirical stuff set in the near future, and it didn't sell very well, but they were a lot of fun to write. And unlike most books I've written for properties like this, there were very few limits on language and violence. So I could have a little more fun and swear a bit more than usual, which I always like to do.
All right. Now, before we really get into the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Hannah Bahedri of Superfan Promotions for asking Comics for Fun and Profit to interview Stuart. Hannah, and she also set up this interview too as well. So Hannah, thank you very much. Stuart, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Hannah's great, and I thank you, Hannah. And Hannah also writes the Ahoy Comics newsletter, which is wonderfly written and always entertaining. And that can be, you can just sign up for that at the address is bit.ly/newsahoy, all lowercase.
Okay, all right. Now, also too, I keep mentioning, I peppered throughout the introduction part that, some of the information I got was from Stuart's website. And Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your website is basically stuartmoore.com. I forgot to write that down.
No, it's stuartmoorewriter.com.
Right, okay.
Right. There are a few too many Stuart Moores in the world, unfortunately. But yeah, stuartmoorewriter.com.
Then also too, I got also the I also got from some information from the Firestorm fan website. The article is titled Stuart Moore Exclusive Interview with Firestorm Fan. That article came out in August 2017. August 17th, 2011. Okay, so Stuart, where can people follow you on social media?
I am on, I'm probably most active on Twitter, where my address is Stuart Moore 1. That's Stuart, for people who are wondering. I'm also on Facebook at the same address, actually, Stuart Moore 1. On Instagram, it's Stuart Moore 01. You already mentioned my website, which is stuartmoorewriter.com. And seems to me probably someplace else, but that covers it. I'm on the, I help curate the Ahoy Comics website, which is comicsahoy.com.
Okay.
And I have a page on that as well.
Okay. Now, Stuart, where did you grow up?
I am originally from the Boston area, but I pretty much grew up mostly in central New Jersey. And my mother still lives out there. I just sort of moved from there up to New York City, and I still live I've lived in Brooklyn pretty much all my adult life, actually.
And then, what was or were your first comics or Sunday comics that you read growing up?
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this a little bit. I have a copy of Action Comics from 1967. Phil Hester or somebody just posted the cover. Like, I can't remember who it was now.
No.
On Twitter. It's super. Oh, I know what it was, because it was one of Neil Adams' first DC covers. I think it was Superman versus the Annihilator. And it was actually a little confusing because it was the middle part of a 3-part story, and it wasn't until I was an adult that I found out what happened with the bloody Annihilator. And the son of the Annihilator, who basically looked like a 1950s juvenile delinquent in a leather jacket. But anyway, yeah, that one. And I remember reading some Legion of Superheroes when I was quite young too. We always did have newspaper strips in the house. I remember being very, very into it was the Cats and Jammer Kids, but I think it was actually the spin-off strip, The Captain and the Kids. Because the Cats and Jammer Kids went through a whole, this is a long story, but it went through a whole very strange copyright decision where 2 guys sued and claimed to own the rights, and the judge, in a very unusual ruling that would not hold up to appeals probably, gave the rights to both of them. So there were 2 strips for a while called The Cats and Jammer Kids and The Captain and the Kids. And The Captain and the Kids was the one that ran in the New York Sunday News, which my grandfather subscribed to and would pass me the comics sections of. So and I loved it because it had it had all the great comics, and it had Dick Tracy on the front, and it had everything. So that I particularly remember. Yeah, Dick Tracy was fun too.
Mm-hmm. That is so cool. Also, too, I'm gonna ask, like, while growing up, what books or like what genre of books did you read while growing up?
I was a big science fiction fan mostly when I was growing up. In fact, I always liked the works of Philip K. Dick. When I got a little older, I really liked Robert Anton Wilson's Illuminatus series.
Mm-hmm.
I have just been rereading some stuff that I hadn't read since I was a teenager, which is the works of Cordwainer Smith, who's a real favorite of mine, and not very well known today, but very influential on a lot of people. His main sequence of stories was about a galactic empire called the Instrumentality of Mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been mined by Jim Starlin, used the word instrumentality in his 1970s Warlock comics.
Mm-hmm.
J. Michael Straczynski used a lot of concepts from this guy's work in Babylon 5.
Mm-hmm.
He's very influential, more than he's known now, but the stuff is just very, very mythological, with layers and layers of future history that people, and a lot of sort of references to the forgotten modern times that people only know through, again, these sort of like layers of lost civilization. It's problematic in a lot of ways too, because he had some problems with LGBTQ people in ways that are of the time.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff you have to screen out if you're going to read it now. But I'm really enjoying revisiting it. It's just it's really sort of lyrical, huge scale stuff.
Oh, okay. Off the cuff question. It must have been great. Literally, living, back then, to have all these amazing science fiction writers at that time, because it must have been awesome to go in a bookstore or just to your library and just say, "Oh my God,"
Yeah, and the field was smaller then, so you could actually sort of you could cover it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could absorb all the important stuff. And yeah, as a kid, like I like everybody tells this story probably. Like I would go to the library and there was all kinds of stuff there. But I also had pretty good local shops that would get in new paperbacks, and I would just I would devour them. There used to be they still are, but there were some pretty good series of year's best short stories that would come out every year. Science fiction, and I would and that was a good survey of the field. I could find writers who I wanted to read more of. I found some people I really liked in that, like R.A. Lafferty, I remember. And so that was fun.
Okay. And then now Drew, Comics for Fun and Profit podcast co-host, submitted this question. Do you remember what was your first comic shop?
Well, Drew, there were a couple, and there was a shop that there might still be some incarnation of it in existence in Harvard Square in Boston, called the Million Year Picnic, which went through a lot of changes. And when I first went there, it was a combination science fiction and comic book store, which was common back then. And it eventually split into two halves. There was the Million Year Picnic became the comic shop, and then there was a wonderful store called the Science Fantasy Bookstore that was around for a while. And there was a similar one actually in Princeton, New Jersey, closer to where I lived then. And I can't remember the name of it, and it did not last very long. It was only around for a couple of years. But that was where I found a lot of the very, very first of the direct market only comics, but also a lot of sort of small, or what we call semi-pro science fiction publications. Like there was a magazine called On Earth that published a lot of new writers. There was stuff like that I just loved.
That's great.
And again, there was less of it back then, so you could get a sense of, you could read most of it, which was kind of exciting.
Oh yes. Now, how did you get started in writing both novels and comics?
Well, I've always written things, but I really got started when I left DC in 1999, which I did without much of a plan. I just felt like I'd been there long enough, and I needed I'd been working full time for my entire adult life, and I needed a little break. And I started writing a few things, a few small press projects, and then sooner than I expected, I got a job at Marvel Knights, and I did that for a while. But the Marvel Knights job was uniquely set up because I was free to write for other people, which isn't true usually with jobs within the comics industry. So I lined up a few other things there, and then after a year and a half, management was changing again at Marvel, and I just I pretty much decided I wanted to do it full time. So I just made the leap. And I cast my lines around. I wrote for a lot of people. The novels again came about. I'm trying to remember how I got referred to Games Workshop. It might have been the artist Steve Pugh, who I'm still in touch with, who works with Ahoy on the book Billionaire Island, and who I'd worked with before. Sweet, sweet guy. And I know he was doing a lot of work for Games Workshop at the time, but I can't remember if that was the connection or exactly how that worked. And that got me doing novels. And then a few years later, Marvel wanted to publish their own line of prose novels. And Axel Alonso was there, who I'd worked with at Vertigo, and he thought, and at Marvel actually, and he thought of me to freelance edit them, which I did for a while, and I wrote a couple of them. Actually, Marie and I would sort of tag team edit them. It worked out pretty well. So,
okay,
I think.
All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of all this.
Yes. Purple.
Yes, we're going to talk about the Wrong Earth, Purple. Now, for listeners now. And Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong, stop me at any time. Now, the premise of The Wrong Earth, it was created by Tom Peyer and Jamal Igle. Now, it's basically Dragon-Fly, and it's like the Batman 66 version and Dragon-Fly Man, Batman, and this is like the Batman 89 version. They cross over into each other's world through a mirror. Now, to me, and like I said, Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong. To me, it's kind of a fish out of water story that is fun, but yet at times is a little dark. I read the first miniseries. I highly recommend it to listeners who to check this out. Now, Stuart, do you want to add anything to that, or correct me? Please feel free. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically two crime fighters. One is a sort of a modern urban vigilante type who's used to using violence and lives in a very corrupt world where the police can't be trusted.
Yes.
And the other is more of a Silver Age type guy who lives in a world where the police are very upstanding and everyone trusts bankers, things like that, And yes, in the core Wrong Earth series, which has gone through 2 volumes now, they switch worlds, and each of them has to adapt, has to learn to not just survive, but practice their, continue their fight against crime under conditions that are radically different from anything they've ever known before. And one of the things I really like about The Wrong Earth is that they both do adapt. Like they both are really good crime fighters. They're not the Dragon-Fly Man, who's the one from the more what you would think of as naive world, is not naive, and he's actually he learns what he has to do. He doesn't become his doppelganger because that's not him.
Yes.
But he learns how to function. And in the second volume, which is called Wrong Earth Night and Day, which is also out in trade paperback, they actually meet and they wind up on a third world, and they have to sort of work together and figure out what's going on there. So that's a lot of fun too. Now, when Ahoy decided to do a series of Wrong Earth one-shots,
yes,
that was Tom and Jamal throwing it out to a bunch of other people, including myself, and just saying, what do you want to do with this? What can you do? And they wound up with Gail Simone's book, which is called Trapped on Teen Planet, which brings them to a world of another world of chocolate malt shops and teenagers who have bands who play bubblegum music. And
kind of like going to the Archie world, sort of
like that. Yeah, you can say that. I legally probably can't, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes.
But no, that's fine. And Mark Russell wrote one that he did with Michael Motnat called Fame and Fortune, which is also out, which is an extremely dark story that basically shows the two heroes and their civilian identities on their own worlds, both trying to get a sports stadium built with their name on it, and how that goes. And it's dire. I highly recommend it. It's a nasty story. And then there was mine, which is about there's a couple more coming, but mine is basically about yet another world. And what I thought was, well, the Dragon-Fly Man basically comes from a world of the 1960s, and the Dragon-Fly is from a much more modern world. So I just kind of split the difference and wrote a 1980s story.
Yeah.
And it draws a bit on, some of the works of people like Tim Burton and Michael Keaton and Prince, who was an inspiration for the villain to a degree, and that's how that came about. And I have a love of that period, and it just seemed to fit both. The other fascinating thing about that is the 1980s is a period, of course, when rich industrialists, which the Dragonfly is, in his secret identity on every world. His name is Richard Fame. And in the 1980s, they were king. They were, that was the beginning of our sort of overblown adulation of rich tycoons. And so that just made it a natural. That just snapped the whole thing into place.
I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought because I'm like, oh my God, this sounds.
No, that's because I went in a billion directions there.
No.
I by the way, I really want to praise Fred Harper, whose artwork on this was amazing. And I've told this story a few times, but when he did this extremely intricate black and white artwork, very moody. And Tom Peyer, who's editing the book, said, maybe the title of it is Purple. Maybe it should just be done in accented purple tones, And he asked Fred if Fred wanted to do that. And Fred said, sure. And Fred went away and he came back with the book fully colored, in not just purple tones, but in extremely moody, sometimes very limited palettes. That's gorgeous. Like I've never seen a comic that looks like this. And there's a hallucination sequence that's crazy. That's just beautiful.
Okay, so not spoiling anything, that I'm just asking. The hallucination scene, is it more into the comic series? Because I've seen a couple pages, preview pages.
Yeah, it's further in. It's toward the end, and it features. I don't know how much of this to give away myself, but I want. It's a good selling point. Like let's just say it features cameos by characters from the regular Wrong Earth series.
Okay. Because actually, let me ask this question before I start really, because I've seen a couple preview pages of, the Wrong Earth Purple, and they're amazing. So I'm going to ask, so how did you team up with Fred Harper?
Well, Fred, I've known Fred a little bit for years, but he actually did work for Vertigo back in the day. But he, more recently, he did a book for Ahoy called Snelson, which is very, very much for adults. I want to say that, but it's hilarious. It's about a washed-up stand-up comedian from the 1990s who tries to make a comeback. And I highly recommend this book. And that was with writer Paul Constant. And I think it was Tom Peyer who suggested him for this. And as it turns out, it was a good collaboration because Fred and I have another much longer project that we can't talk about yet, but that will be coming soon. So I love working with him. Great guy. And he's local. He lives in New York, so that helps.
That's right. Yes. But so listeners, Snelson now, because I remember, actually, it's the second issue that I love of Snelson, where he's like and I'm sorry, sir, I'm kind of going off the track, but I love the part where Snelson is trying to be relevant now. So he's doing podcasting, and I love it. And there is one page where Snelson and his podcast, producer, and there is supposed to be some type of guerrilla journalist that's following Snelson, and
Yeah.
and then okay, we're gonna do our podcast. We've got this famous guest, and all of a sudden the producer's kind of telling him smiling through his face, and he's like, he canceled at the last minute. He doesn't like the show. I don't know, something like that. He canceled at the last minute, just so. And then Snelson's going, so what do we do? Well, we just keep smiling in front of her, and maybe she'll just forget. And that smile just it just grows out of there. But it's so great because, to me, even though the smile is out of proportion, to me it conveys the message of whenever we get into certain situations where it's supposed to go as planned, oh shoot, it didn't. Now how do I tell my wife this, or do I tell my friend this? And you just smile and you're kind of sweating and you're going, oh God, okay, yeah, everything's gonna be okay. The smile grows. Yeah, we're fine. And the smile keeps growing and growing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, have you had that experience on the podcast? Like, have you had your own smile growing like huge like that?
No, thank God this is audio.
Yeah.
Thank God this is audio. No.
Well, I'll try not to put you through that. But yeah, that is a beautiful page. I agree with you. It's a use of an exaggerated visual element to really convey the emotional state of the characters, and it's a lovely collaboration between Paul and Fred. They really do a nice job together.
Yes, and then also going back to the page that one of the panels, the preview panels that I saw for The Wrong Earth Purple. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the villain, the Dragon-Fly's main villain is his name is Number One.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a scene where, it looks like he's playing some huge organ piano. There's a guy that's strapped, and he's strapped to a bomb, and it's all dark, but it just and it's like on page 2. That's all I can. I don't. So anyway, but Fred's artwork, it conveys a sense of dread and fear, because even though you can't see the guy, the person the hostage,
right?
Even though you can't see his whole face, you can see part of his face, and you can see and it's nothing exaggerated, but it just gives a sense of dread and fear, and then the hostage is scared of what's going to happen next.
Yeah. There's wonderful atmosphere in there. That's actually not Number One. That's a villain I invented called the Player.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
A music-themed villain.
Yes, sorry.
But yeah, I agree with you. The atmosphere in those scenes is incredible. And again, that's where it looked great in black and white, but in color, Fred just he added another whole layer to it. It's beautiful stuff.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm gonna ask. And correct me if I'm wrong. So, on Earth-Kappa's Dragon-Fly, he has a different costume? Is that correct?
They all have slightly different costumes. Fred designed this one, and what we talked about doing with him was trying to evoke this sort of rubber super suits of the late 80s and early 90s that were very much in vogue at that point. So he's it's a little bulkier, and a little more textured, a little more weirdly textured than the other Dragonflies have. But that's the Dragonfly costumes are all subtly different. The Dragonfly Man's has these goofy floppy antennae that the Dragonfly would never, he would just chop them off, he would never put up with that. So yeah, they're all, it's a slightly different one with heavier boots, and again, more of a sort of a molded rubber feel to it.
Now, this is an off-the-cuff question, and I'm just joking on this one, because when you start to talk about the rubber molded suit, did you guys make it where Earth-Kappa's Dragonfly cannot turn his head? He has to turn his head.
You were going to ask that. It doesn't actually come up. I was realizing, I just watched the new Batman movie, and I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was really good. But I realized that they still haven't made those Batman costumes look like you could actually move around or do much in them. And it's been, how long has it been? It's been like 25 years. Like, and Batman still can't really move his head very well. Like, I realized whenever I watch those movies, I always want more Bruce Wayne. Like, I always like Bruce Wayne in them. Like, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm going off the cuff, but because I just had this flashback. I still remember seeing Batman '89, and that the bell tower scene where he's fighting the Joker. You see him in the background, and you see poor Michael Keaton. He can't turn his neck, but you see him turn his whole body. Just
He's got to whip around. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch any of those movies from around that time now, you could tell they hadn't quite figured out how to film a climax yet. Like they're all like suddenly you're in like real close to people, like, and you can barely see what happens. It's like they would either run out of money or they just hadn't quite figured it out with superheroes yet. They didn't know what to do. So, yeah. And I like that movie too. That's a really fun film.
Oh yeah. So like you mentioned, Earth-Kappa is like an Earth where the 80s never end. And according to the promo, this is where greed is good, etc. Now, did you and Fred reminisce living in the 80s?
I didn't really talk to him about that very much, but I certainly went back to I did. I mean, I went back to some inspirations with regard to music that are salted in there, but also I also went back to Michael Lewis's first book, Liar's Poker, which was his experience as it's a very entertaining book. It's his experience on the trading floor of Lehman Brothers when he first got out of college.
Wow.
And he's still writing some amazing work. He had a book out last year called The Premonition, which is about the lead up to the pandemic and the people and some key people in local government and local health services who saw something coming, and it's terrific. But Liar's Poker was his first book, and it was very much autobiographical and about him getting out of college, and going to work in these sort of appalling places with these like brutish guys who were suddenly being told they were the greatest thing in the world, and that the financial industry was king. And so I did go back to that, and there are some very specific references to that, just hidden in the back of the in the back of the story. But that was a real inspiration.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Okay, do you want to give any shout outs to anyone else who contributed to this issue?
Fred did actually, as I said, both the art and the coloring. So he's very much my collaborator on this. The lettering is by Rob Steen, who's an old friend who does lettering for all the Ahoy books, with only a couple of creator-driven exceptions. And he did a wonderful job, as always. There's a text page by David Hyde, who is writing, I think you mentioned this, he's writing cocktail-themed text pages to all the Wrong Earth books, and he really outdid himself on this one. It's got references to some of the things in the story, and which are takeoffs on like magazines and trends of the time of the 1980s. So yeah, it's a really sweet piece, and I just realized it's got artwork, I think, by Carol Lay, and that's done in it's done in pink tones. I guess it's supposed to be purple, but it's more pink. But anyway, that's really cute too. It's a really nice package. I got it in the mail just the other day, and I was looking through copies. I'm like, oh, this all really works. It's just a nice. And one thing about the Wrong Earth one shots that I don't think Ahoy has trumpeted very much yet is that in most of them, the lead stories are 25 pages. They're a bit longer than usual. And I helped set that up as Ahoy's operations manager, because for the one-shots, we thought it would be nice to just have a little more room for the writers and artists stories to breathe, since they had to, it all had to be done in one. And that certainly helped me in writing this. Like that made it possible to tell a whole story with a larger cast than I could have done in 20 pages.
Oh, that's nice.
But it doesn't leave as much room for extra features as usual. Like that pretty much David's David's text page pretty much fills it up.
All right. Now, how did you get Gene Ha and Jerry Ordway to do variant covers?
Well, those both came through Tom Peyer. Jerry had done another variant cover for Ahoy recently for My Bad #1, but what Tom's inspiration was to have him do an homage to his cover for the Batman '89 movie adaptation, which he did beautifully. It's really fun. Gene is doing. I've worked with Gene before. I've known him for a long time, but Gene is doing cover C variants for all of the Wrong Earth one shots.
Oh, okay.
And he did a really nice one for my book about that just uses the different versions of Stinger, who's Dragonfly Man's sidekick in the different universes. So yeah, that's just a really nice piece of art. Gene's so talented. He's incredible.
That is so cool. All right. So Stuart, we've got to part of the interview where I'm just going to ask you funny questions.
Okay.
Listeners, I'm going to ask Stuart just some fun questions.
I hope I have funny answers. We'll see.
And because the main thing is we love comics and we love poking fun at events, So, my question is this, one of the lines to build up this event, the Wrong Earth event was words will be written, words will be erased. Were some of your words erased from this issue?
Mostly by me. One of my favorite things to do when I'm writing comics is when I see the art and realize I can trim my own writing, that it's not necessary. I just love doing that when the art just tells the story. So I think I did that a little bit, but no, I was not a victim of extreme censorship or anything, if that's what you're asking. I wasn't told. I don't remember being. Tom makes suggestions, and I agree with them sometimes. So yeah, but no, it was a very it was more of a how shall I put this? It wasn't so much a Crisis on Infinite Earths situation where entire pages or worlds were destroyed. It was more I don't know, maybe Flashpoint. I don't know what it was. It was something else.
All right. Now, did you toy around with other ideas for your story, such as maybe, how about the Wrong Earth Kashmir?
No, I did. I did recently look up the original outline, and the working title was "The Wrong Earth Like It's 1989." But purple was just punchier and seemed to fit better, so we went with that instead.
Now the labeling of this multiverse spanning money grab comic, this is labeled, the multiverse spanning money grabbing comic event. Now, I'm joking on this part. Is it true you guys want to charge $5 for this book instead of $4.99?
Wow, I was not prepared for that question. I have, as Marjorie Taylor Greene would say, I have no recollection of those discussions.
Okay. Final question. Will we see a Wrong Earth story, and I'm going to say from you, okay, that takes place in Hawaii? Will we see something like that?
I would love that, because that would mean I would have to go there for research, and I've never been. So, yes. But that's not entirely under my control. So let's put a pin in that one. Let's come back to that maybe in a year. Let's see.
So, and you can pitch that to Tom. Tom, I want to do Wrong Earth. We have to set it in Hawaii, but I have to go to Hawaii.
Yep, noted. It's on the agenda. Yep.
All right, Stuart. Thank you for just having fun with those questions. Listeners, again, the Wrong Earth, some of these stories are funny, but yet there's also a little bit of a dark undertone to them. But it's very good. It really is.
Yeah, it's all very accessible too. I think, if you've ever seen anything about multiverses, and I think a lot of people have just this weekend.
Yes.
And you can pick up. We're recording this right after Doctor Strange opened. I should say that.
We have to. Yeah.
Then you've seen, what we're playing off of. You know what we're riffing from.
Oh yeah. All right. Now I'm going to move on to one of your recent prose novels. Actually came out last year. Marvel Crisis Protocol Target Kree. Now, what is this story about?
Well, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, I guess. It's basically what they Aconite Books came to me, and what they wanted was sort of a large-scale epic story, because Crisis Protocol, again, is a tabletop miniatures game that involves all the big Marvel characters. And what I tried to do with Target Kree was write my own version of the equivalent of a Thanos movie, just something huge scale with a lot of characters. Marvel rather wisely asked me to trim it back a little bit, otherwise it would have come out much longer. But it's basically the plot of it is that after it starts off with the Guardians, and when the Guardians fail to stop the destruction of a planet, a group of Kree refugee from the planet come to Earth, and start working for Stark Enterprises, pilot employment program for immigrants, basically. And that doesn't go very well. Conditions aren't good. Something's very wrong here. And that brings Tony Stark into it, like what's going on in his company, something that he's not aware of. The Guardians become involved. The Guardians wind up in battle with the Avengers for various reasons, and the whole thing just sort of mushrooms from there. It was very important to me, if I'm going to write a book like this, that it obviously it has to be a big thrill ride and a slugfest with a lot of characters, but I also wanted it to be really about something, and the plight of immigrants and workers' rights was very important to me, and is very much at the core of this story. Hopefully in a way that's not preachy, but that sort of comes naturally out of the characters and the situations set up.
Oh, okay. No, but that's pretty cool, because it's I mean, we talked about our love for Star Trek. The story's kind of sort of a metaphor. Instead of coming out and going, we're going to use the Avengers and Guardians and the Guardians.
Right. In the same way that Star Trek would tell stories about racism or about the Vietnam War at the time in the 60s, in a disguised way, in a science fictional gloss over it. I was going to say something else about it, and it went completely out of my mind. The Crisis Protocol thing was really nice, because it did give me access to all these great characters. Probably the most important characters in the book are Tony Stark, Iron Man, and Ms. Marvel, and the Guardians. But there are a lot of others. There's a lot of I got to play with a lot of fun toys there.
That's so nice. Now,
I knew what I was going to say was that it's based on the game, and it's tied into the game, but no knowledge of the game you don't need to know anything about the game to read it. It's basically the Marvel Universe versions of the characters.
Okay, so, and I'm going to be honest with you. I was trying to. It's going to sound like a dumb question, do you hope that the Marvel Crisis Protocol books, do you hope that it will lead some novel readers to maybe jump over to reading either comics or trades, and vice versa, where comic fans can move from comics to reading the novels?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I always like it when there's cross-pollination. Frankly, there's so much of all of this being published now. There's so much comics material and so much prose novels that I particularly hope that people will read the novel and think, oh, that's Stuart Moore. He's pretty talented. I should check out what else he's done. And that could lead to stuff like Wrong Earth Purple, I guess. But yeah, I think we're living in a time when, as I think I touched on this earlier in the podcast, but like these characters are so common coin from the movies now. Everyone knows who they are. And that didn't used to be true. So hopefully the whole thing is a bit more accessible than it might have been like if you wrote a novel in the 1970s or 80s.
Yes. Or I'm just going to say, I just thought of Nancy Collins when she wrote a Fantastic Four novel back in the 90s.
Oh, did she? Wow, I don't even remember that. That's crazy.
It was Fantastic Four Attack on Atlantis.
Okay.
And she said, it had to be a Fantastic Four story, but in reality, it was more she wanted to write a Namor story. So and if we think about it, even back in the 90s, not all pop culture fans. If we're back in the 90s, we talk about Submariner or Namor, they'd be looking at us like, what?
I know, yeah.
Who's that?
I wrote a Namor series for a while, about 10 years ago. That was fun. I wrote about 11 issues of that. That was wild because he's such a proud and honorable character, but such a jerk at the same time. Like he was really fun to write. At the time, I think I was sort of basing him on Don Draper from Mad Men more than anything else. That seemed to fit. But to your larger point, yes, I agree. There's a lot more room to. I feel like I have to. I actually remember. This is a digression, but I actually remember when I was a kid, there were these little novelizations of the original Star Trek series that would put like 6 or 8 stories in a single volume.
James
Blish. Remember James Blish, yeah. And I remember the first couple of them, he started off by sort of describing the Enterprise, describing the bridge and who Captain Kirk was. And I noticed by the third one he felt like he didn't need to, I think, because people knew what the Enterprise looked like. Like they knew who Captain Kirk was.
Yes.
So, and especially if you were, I mean, I do tend to assume that if you're actually going to sit down and pick up a Marvel novel, you probably have some familiarity with these characters at this point. Like, I don't think there's anybody who has never seen a Marvel movie who's going to buy my book. Like, I just don't think that's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
And so many people have seen that's a huge potential audience right there.
And then the other, sorry, Stuart, I'm kind of going down rabbit holes, but the other thing too is not only is just that the Marvel movies, the comics, but also too, I just thought about it too, is that, I mean, are on our iPhones, we have the Apple News app, and I mean, all of a sudden you can scroll down and you can see like, I'm going to try to pick up some obscure character, Squirrel Girl. I'm just going to pull Squirrel Girl. All of a sudden, if there's a hint of a rumor of where Squirrel Girl like Squirrel Girl is going to appear in Doctor Strange 3 or Guardians of the Galaxy 4, and all of a sudden the article will just go into who may play it, but then also who is Squirrel Girl too. And then that gives other people exposure of who these characters are.
Yeah, and I think modern readers and viewers are used to that. If they don't know who somebody is, they don't give up. They don't throw up their arm. They just pull out their phone, frankly. And that allows you to do a lot of interesting things with storytelling. It's you still have to keep people's interest, or they won't keep reading. But if they come across, even in a long form TV show, if a character comes back who hasn't been around for a while, people will check on it. Like they won't, if they're into the show, they won't be confused. They'll just find out. They'll just figure it out. So we have different tools available as viewers, as readers, than we used to.
Because we both know back in in the 70s and 80s, of course, all we had through either DC, I just keep thinking of DC, was the DC, not the letter page, but like they would have, Superman fights Terra Man. This is who Terra Man is, and he's going to appear in this. And the Answer Man, You know?
Oh, Answer Man, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and then also too, what was it?
Oh, and that page, the Direct Currents page.
Yes, that's it. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then all we had back then was the Amazing Heroes magazine, comics. I mean, and it was these were magazines that were just only sold, and I could be wrong, but I only noticed them mostly in like direct sale comic book shops.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where they were sold.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I'm digressing. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna slowly wrap this up.
Cool.
Okay, so what is the most fun or exciting thing that you love about writing in general, whether it's comics or short stories, novels?
I really love when, and this doesn't always happen, but I love it when I can just get in a flow and something lines up when I've prepared well enough, and when I'm really into a story, and everything just falls together better than I expected, and new ideas keep occurring to me as I'm writing. That's just a wonderful experience.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question. Thank you.
Or as Charles Bukowski put it, it's the only good fight there is.
Okay. What is your favorite convention moment, whether as a fan or as a creator?
Ooh, wow. I love conventions. I really do. Most people will complain about them, but I miss them. I haven't really gone to many of them since the pandemic started. But wow. The signing I did with Stan Lee in, I want to say 2016. It was somewhere around there. That was pretty amazing. That was pretty special. It was in the Disney booth, right in the middle of Comic-Con San Diego. And people just kept coming up, and people were so excited to see him. And I was sitting with him, and he was a little hard of hearing. I had to repeat what people said to him sometimes. But that was a really special day. That was really nice.
That's really nice. I'm just asking, do you know when your next convention or store signing appearance may be? Because
I'm not committing to anything right now. I will, in some form or another, be around for New York Comic Con in October, because that's local to me. This past year, I didn't actually go to the con. I just sort of hung around for 2 days and met up with people, and that was really nice. The weather was beautiful. It's all going to depend on pandemic numbers. I feel like people are not taking this as seriously in this region as they should. Our numbers are up, and I'm all double boosted and everything, but I still don't want it, and I'm gonna take it a step at a time. I am actually just about to cancel my Comic-Con San Diego hotel. I just can't see going to an event of that magnitude right now. And it's so expensive anyway, and I probably just wouldn't enjoy myself. So hopefully next year for that.
Stuart, I'm going to say no. I understand, because we have actually on Oahu we have 2 comic book conventions. One is still kind of up in the air. I think they'll probably come back in 2023. But our other one, Comic-Con Honolulu, is in August. I'm going to say back in February of this year, I was going to go, numbers look they're going down. I might go, but now numbers are going back up. And we're recording this in the middle of May, and our numbers are creeping back up. So I'm kind of I think I'll skip it this year. So yeah. Okay. So you've already answered this question, but I'm going to ask you. I'm going to take a little spin on this.
Maybe I have a better answer.
No. But so is Hawaii on your bucket list for you and your family?
I would love to go to Hawaii. I haven't. It's not. It hasn't been the top of my list. Like I'm drawn to. I've tended to go to. I've been to. Well, I'd love to get back to Europe again. But right now I'm not thinking about that stuff very much, because the pandemic is still making travel tricky, and I figure in a year or two I'll regroup, figure this out. But yes, I would love to come to Hawaii sometime.
Okay. All right. Last question. Any closing words to our listeners?
I hope everybody's safe.
Mhm.
I hope everybody's doing okay. The world's a little scary right now.
Yes.
And if you have a little time and you want if you want to jump back to the 1980s for a little bit, try my book Wrong Earth Purple. It's only one issue. You can get in, you can get out, and you might be introduced to the Wrong Earth series too, which I think you'd also enjoy.
Now, Stuart, thank you very much. I wish you all the success with the Wrong Earth Purple. And mahalo. Thank you in Hawaiian. Thank you very much for your time. Literally, thank you very much. I mean, I'm sorry. I know I was going down rabbit holes asking you.
Oh no, I love that. And I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate you talking to me about all this stuff today. And I think I went on a few pretty weird digressions myself. So you've been bearing with me.
but I have to say, that I can't remember the writer's name that you mentioned, but that book titled Premonition.
Oh yeah, Michael Lewis. Yeah. That's I recommend that book very highly.
I really want to read that. Yeah. So okay. Sorry. Okay. So I also want to thank Hannah of Superfan Promotions for setting up this interview. So Hannah, thank you very much.
Yay, Hannah.
And then now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out the Wrong Earth event from Ahoy Comics. Now, the Wrong Earth Purple, when this interview comes out, it already came out. It came out on May 18th, so please check that out. Also, to check out the Wrong Earth Trapped on Teen Planet, also the Wrong Earth Fame and Fortune. If you're interested in these one shots, please ask your local comic shop to order them. Also, to the Wrong Earth Confidence Men comes out on June 22nd.
Yeah, that's Mark Waid and Leonard Kirk. That's a really nice book. And there's one more after that. You probably have it down there, right?
Yep, the Wrong Earth Meet. Tom Pyre and
Greg Scott. Scott. Yeah. That's a nice book too. That's Tom, the creator of the series, co-creator. Yeah.
Okay. And then I just want Drew. Thank you very much, Drew. Thank you, Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you,
Drew.
Thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, literally, because me and Stuart were we were just like talking about old times and stuff like that. So, just thank you very much.
Yeah, you really put up with us. Thank you. Thank you, listeners.
So thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Aloha.
Our LCS is Cowabunga Comics out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and their mail order company, Deep Discount Comics. And we went there, and we were actually invoice number 00001. We were the very first their very first customer, which was kind of cool. They've been nothing short of fantastic, customer service wise. Discounts, they were very close, if not the same or better than DCBS on a lot of things. Over and above, customer service wise, always taking care of us, going the extra mile, so responsive, getting instantaneous responses back to questions about things, and to the point where knowing the stuff you like and anticipating your needs and having it suggested that you might want to add this to your order already before you even have to think about it. That's kind of cool. Really quality experience. So we love working with Cowabunga and Deep Discount, and that's why they're in our show notes every single episode, and have been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. That we leave them there because we like them. They're cool, good people. That's why they're in there. By God, they'd tell you to, if you've got a local comic book shop that you love, stay with them, because everybody needs to support their local comic shops. But if you're looking, check them out. You can check them out in the show notes. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of them. Either get on their list, just so you can check and see what kind of FOC and pre-order stuff they have and the discounts, and they'll send it to you each month, get you on that email list. And you can check out their shop, because they have a great shop of exclusive Cowabunga variants. Amazing stuff. Yes, they've always been there for us, and we take them for granted. So there you go. Now you know.